My parents secretly sold my grandparents' lake house that was promised to me, then said I was too young to inherit anything, so I did this with their belongings, then kicked them out of my house. Throwaway. BC, I'm pretty sure my cousin follows this sub. Hi Rachel, if we're reading this, please don't tell anyone. I, female, 28, just found out my parents sold my grandparents' lake house that was supposed to be mine, and I'm absolutely devastated and don't know what to do. So some backstory, I guess. Sorry, this is going to be kind of long and all over the place. I'm literally still shaking while typing this. I've always been super close with my grandparents, like way closer than with my actual parents. My parents were always busy with their careers and basically emotionally absent for most of my childhood. They're not like horrible people, I guess, but they were never really there for me the way my grandparents always were. Like, my grandparents came to every school event when my parents were always too busy with work stuff. Honestly, they were more like my real parents in a lot of ways. My grandparents bought this lake house back in the 70s. I think 1972, but might have been 73. My grandpa told the story differently each time, and it basically became our family gathering spot for literally everything. Starting when I was 8, I spent every single summer there. My grandpa taught me everything about maintaining the place, like how you have to jiggle the water heater just right to get it working, and sometimes hit it with the wooden spoon he kept next to it for this exact reason, haha. And which dock boards needed to be replaced every couple years because of water damage. That place was basically my second home and like where all my best childhood memories happened. My grandparents always told me the lake house would be mine someday. I was the only grandkid who actually wanted to preserve it and keep it in the family. About 5 years ago, they even showed me their will where it specifically stated the lake house would go to me when they passed away. I remember feeling kind of weird about seeing the will while they were still alive, but my grandpa told me they wanted me to know their wishes were clear. Well, last year was awful. My grandma passed from heart failure in January. She'd had problems for years, but it was still a shock. And then my grandpa followed like 6 months later in July. The doctor said it was complications from his diabetes, but honestly, I think he died of a broken heart after losing grandma. They were married for 52 years. My parents were named as executors of the will. I didn't push too hard about finalizing the lake house transfer because I knew there was a bunch of complicated paperwork and stuff. Plus, we were all grieving, so I wanted to give everyone time to process everything. I guess that was my first mistake. Then last week, I got this call from Mrs. Nelson, who told me there were people moving in next door and asked if I'd sold the place. I was so confused, I thought maybe she was seeing things wrong or something. She does have cataracts, so I wasn't sure if she was confused. I immediately drove out there. It's about an hour from where I live, and sure enough, there were literal moving trucks and strangers carrying furniture inside my grandparents' house. I felt like I was in some bizarre nightmare. I thought I was going to throw up right there in the driveway. I walked up to this middle-aged couple and introduced myself, saying I was the family member who inherited the property. The husband told me they bought the house from my parents. I insisted there must be some mistake because the house was specifically left to me in my grandparents' will. The wife looked super uncomfortable, but showed me the closing documents on her phone. And there it was, my parents' signatures and a sale price of $825,000. They told me they closed just 3 weeks ago, like they literally just bought it from my parents. The new owners were actually really nice about the whole thing, which honestly made it even worse somehow. They apologized even though none of this was their fault. I apologized for the awkward situation and left in tears. I sat in my car crying for like 20 minutes before I could even drive. I was so upset I almost threw up in my car. I drove straight to my parents' house. When I got there, they were literally packing for some European vacation. I was still crying and asked why they sold my grandparents' lake house. My dad was super dismissive and said something about how they handled the estate appropriately, whatever the hell that means. My mom said something about me being too young to handle property ownership. I am 28. I literally own the house they live in right now. I reminded them that the will specifically left me the lake house. My dad got all condescending and told me I don't understand the complexities of estate management. I asked what happened to the $825,000 from the sale. My mom gave some vague answer about investments and paying off debts, and some BS about responsible financial planning. Then I noticed they had all this new fancy luggage for their trip, like expensive stuff they definitely didn't have before. My dad eventually admitted they were using some of the money for their European vacation, which is like a 2-week trip to multiple countries. My mom had the audacity to say they'll set aside something for me eventually. When I asked how much and when, they basically changed the subject, and my dad got all pissy and was like, "We don't need to justify our decisions to you." I'm absolutely devastated. It's not even just about the money, although that's a huge part of it, obviously. That lake house was my connection to my grandparents. I had been making plans to live there part-time while running my graphic design business remotely. After my grandparents died, I struggled with really bad anxiety and depression, and the lake house was where I felt closest to them. I'm not usually the type to cause problems. Literally, ask anyone who knows me. I avoid conflict at all costs. But this feels like such a massive betrayal. The worst part, my parents have been living in my house for the past 2 years. They had some financial problems and had to sell their house, and I agreed to let them stay with me for what was supposed to be 3 months. That was 2 years ago, and they haven't contributed a single penny toward household expenses. Not for utilities, not for groceries, nothing. So now I'm dealing with the fact that my parents sold a property that wasn't theirs to sell while living rent-free in my home and using the money from my inheritance to go on fancy European vacations. I'm thinking about talking to a lawyer about the lake house situation and also evicting my parents from my property. I feel like I can't take anymore, but I'm also terrified of blowing up my family. Like they're still my parents, even though right now I can barely look at them without feeling sick. Edit. Oh my freaking God. I didn't expect this to blow up like this. Thank you for all the support and advice. Edit 2. A lot of people are asking about the will. Yes, I did see it with my own eyes about 5 years ago, and it definitely said the lake house would go to me. But my parents were the executors, so I guess they had some legal way to sell it. I don't really understand all the legal stuff, which is why I'm thinking of talking to a lawyer. Edit 3. To clarify about my living situation, yes, my parents live in my house that I own. I bought it 4 years ago with money I saved from my business. They were supposed to stay for 3 months after they had financial problems. Dad lost his job. Mom's online jewelry business failed. But that turned into 2 years somehow, and they don't contribute anything. And yes, I've tried to talk to them about it multiple times, but they always have excuses about their finances being temporary issues. Edit 4. For those suggesting I kick them out immediately, I'm definitely considering it, but it's complicated. Despite everything, they're still my parents, and I've never been good at confrontation, something my therapist says comes from growing up with emotionally unavailable parents, lol. But I'm looking into my legal options tomorrow. Now for the first update. So a lot has happened since my last post, and honestly, I'm still trying to process everything. First, thank you all so much for the advice and support. I literally cried reading some of your comments in a good way. I didn't expect that many people to care about my situation. So after reading all your comments telling me to lawyer up as soon as possible, I scheduled a consultation with an estate attorney last week. I had this tiny bit of hope that maybe there was some legal way to undo the sale, or at least get back the money that should have been mine. Well, it didn't exactly go how I hoped. The lawyer explained that even though my grandparents' will did specify the lake house should go to me, my parents, as the executors, had certain legal authority to liquidate estate assets. If they could justify, was for the benefit of the estate, or something like that. There's all this complicated legal language about executor discretion that I honestly didn't fully understand. I showed him the pictures I had of the will on my phone, and he said that while it clearly showed my grandparents' intentions, my parents basically found a technical loophole. He told me I could try to challenge the sale, but it would probably take like 1 to 2 years, cost thousands in legal fees, money I definitely don't have right now. And since the sale to the new owners is already complete, there's no guarantee the court would even rule in my favor. The new owners purchased the property in good faith, so they're protected. The most I might get is some financial compensation from my parents, but even that's not certain. I left that meeting feeling completely crushed. Like, my grandparents tried to protect me and make sure I got the lake house, but my parents just found a way around it anyway. It feels so unfair, and I literally cried the whole way home from his office. My parents got back from their fancy European vacation a few days after my lawyer consultation. I decided to confront them again, trying to be calmer this time and get actual answers about what happened to the money. So I sat them down in the living room, my living room, in my house, and asked them for a complete accounting of the lake house sale proceeds. Like, where exactly did the $825,000 go? My dad immediately got all defensive and was like, "We don't need to explain our financial decisions to you." I reminded him that it was my inheritance they sold, and I deserved to know. My mom tried to sound all reassuring, saying they've set aside some money for my future needs, whatever that means. I asked specifically how much and when I would actually receive it. My dad got this condescending look and said something like, "When the time is right, and when you're more financially responsible." I was like, "Are you serious right now? I literally own this house we're sitting in and run my own successful business." My mom dismissed my graphic design business as just a hobby, even though it literally provides my entire income and has for the past 3 years. She's always done this, acts like because I work from home and don't have a real office, it's not a real job. Meanwhile, her failed online jewelry business that lost like $30,000 was supposedly a legitimate entrepreneurial venture. After going back and forth for a while, my dad finally admitted they've already spent nearly $100,000 paying off old debts and on their vacation. And I noticed they have a new car in the driveway that definitely wasn't there before they left for Europe. When I pointed it out, my mom said they deserve nice things after dealing with your grandparents for years. That comment made me realize something I hadn't fully understood before. They've actually resented my grandparents for a long time. My dad started complaining about how my grandpa and grandma always favored me and never appreciated how hard he and my mom worked. The way he was talking, it was like he felt entitled to their money all along. The thing is, I know for a fact my grandparents helped my parents financially many times. While sorting through some old papers in the basement a few months ago, I found bank statements showing my grandparents had loaned my parents money at least 5 to 6 times over the years, totaling what looked like over $60. And as far as I know, those loans were never repaid. Also, I've been looking at property values in the area, and similar lakefront properties are selling for $950,000 to $1,100,000 right now. So not only did they sell my inheritance, they sold it for way under market value. I'm starting to think they rushed the sale to get quick cash before I could figure out what was happening and try to stop it. Things at home have been getting worse since that conversation. They're still living in my house, going on 2 years now, not the 3 months they initially promised, and now they're treating me like I'm the one who did something wrong. And I've discovered some other disturbing things. I found charges on my personal credit card that I didn't make. Nothing huge, just like $20 at Starbucks, $35 at the gas station, stuff like that. When I asked about it, my mom casually said, "Oh, we were just borrowing it. We'll pay you back eventually." But they never have. I want to maintain some kind of family harmony, but I feel increasingly violated by their actions. The final straw was when I saw my mom wearing the necklace that belonged to my grandma that was specifically given to me on my 21st birthday. When I confronted her, she claimed she was just borrowing it, but I've seen her wearing it at least 5 to 6 times over the past few months. That necklace is one of the few things I have to remember my grandma by, and she just took it without asking. After all of these violations, I finally decided I couldn't take it anymore. I consulted with my attorney again, and he confirmed I have every legal right to evict them since they have no lease and pay no rent. So I drafted a formal 30-day eviction notice. Last week, I sat them down again and handed them the notice. My dad actually laughed when he read it and said, "I can't be serious." I told him I was completely serious and legally within my rights. My mom started crying and asking where they were supposed to go. I suggested they use some of the lake house money to rent an apartment. My dad got angry, calling me ungrateful after everything they've done for me. I reminded them they sold property that was meant to be mine. My mom accused me of being heartless and throwing family away over money. My dad threatened to tell the entire family how I'm throwing them out on the street. And guess what? That's exactly what they've done. It's been 2 weeks since I gave them the notice, and they've made zero effort to find new housing. Instead, they've been calling family members and telling them this completely distorted version of events. I've gotten angry calls from my Uncle Ron and cousin Brooke, who had only heard my parents' side of the story. When I tried to explain the truth about the lake house, they acted like I was making excuses for being cruel. I've started seeing a therapist to help deal with all the stress and guilt. Even though logically, I know I'm in the right, emotionally, it's still really hard. She's helping me see that my parents have always taken advantage of people's generosity and avoided responsibility. Yesterday, I found rental listings on my dad's laptop that they had looked at but dismissed as beneath them. Like, there was a nice 2-bedroom apartment for $1,500 per month that they had written off as too small and in a questionable area. It's literally in one of the nicest parts of town. I'm getting really worried that they don't actually intend to leave when the 30 days are up. At first, I thought maybe they were ignoring the eviction notice as some kind of reconciliation attempt or something, but I'm starting to realize they're just taking advantage of me again and assuming I won't actually follow through. What happens if they refuse to move out when the 30 days are up? The thought of having to call authorities to remove my own parents from my house makes me feel awful, but I don't know what else to do. They've shown zero respect for my boundaries or property. Edit. Just to clarify some things people are asking. Yes, I did give them a written eviction notice that's legally binding in my state. My lawyer helped me draft it properly. The 30 days started from the date they received the notice, which was exactly 16 days ago now. Edit 2. A lot of people are asking why I let them stay for so long in the first place. Honestly, I've always been a pushover when it comes to my parents. They raised me to feel responsible for their happiness and to believe that setting boundaries was selfish. I feel confused about it a lot. I love them, but also know they're using me. Every time I tried to bring up them moving out before, they'd have some excuse about why they needed just a little more time. Edit 3. To those saying I should check my credit report, yes, I already did that. Fortunately, they haven't opened any accounts in my name or anything that serious, just the small charges on my existing card that I mentioned. I've since canceled that card and got a new one that I keep locked in my desk drawer. Now for the second update. So, it's been a wild couple of weeks since my last post. Like, seriously, wild. First, thank you all for the support and advice. I've read literally every comment, even though I couldn't respond to them all. So where to even start? The 30-day eviction notice I gave my parents was basically coming to an end, and they had made zero effort to actually find somewhere else to live. Like, literally nothing. No packing, no apartment hunting, nothing. I think they honestly believed I wouldn't actually go through with it. Like, they thought I was just bluffing or something. 2 days before the deadline, so day 28, I guess, I reminded them that they needed to be out in 48 hours. My dad actually laughed at me. He told me to stop the charade because he knew I wouldn't throw my own parents out. My mom was just sitting there, nodding along with this smug little smile. I was like, what the frick? Did they seriously think I wouldn't follow through after everything? During this whole 30-day period, I started noticing things going missing around the house. At first, it was small stuff that I couldn't be 100% sure about. Like, I thought maybe I misplaced my good kitchen scissors, or maybe I was just going crazy. But then, bigger things started disappearing. My expensive camera equipment that I use for my business, the one my mom calls just a hobby, even though it literally pays my bills, just vanished. The KitchenAid mixer I bought myself for Christmas last year, gone. And then I noticed some jewelry was missing too, including stuff I inherited from my paternal grandmother. My therapist, who is seriously a godsend through all this, pointed out that this is just continuing their pattern of disrespecting my boundaries and feeling entitled to my things. She's been helping me see how much my parents have always done this kind of stuff. I just never had the courage to stand up to them before. When the 30 days were officially up, and they were still sitting on my couch watching my TV in my house like nothing was happening, I had to start formal eviction proceedings through the sheriff's department. My lawyer walked me through the whole process. It wasn't cheap, but honestly, at that point, I was just done. Completely done. While waiting for the sheriff's eviction date, which took another week to schedule, I decided to take a complete inventory of everything in my house. I went room by room taking photos and documenting what was mine versus theirs. That's when I realized even more of my stuff was missing than I originally thought. And then I found the empty jewelry box where my grandma's wedding ring should have been. That ring meant everything to me. My grandma gave it to me on her deathbed and made me promise to wear it on my wedding day. Finding it missing was devastating. I sat on my bedroom floor and sobbed for like an hour straight. When I finally pulled myself together, I confronted them with a list of all the missing stuff. My dad denied knowing anything about it. I showed them the photos I had of the items from before they disappeared. Thank God I'm obsessive about photographing everything for my design business. My mom tried lying to me, saying I was imagining things, or maybe I misplaced them myself. I was like, are you kidding me right now? Then I specifically asked about Grandma's wedding ring. My mom got this weird look on her face and finally admitted she borrowed it because it should have been hers anyway. Her exact words. I was absolutely furious. I demanded they return all my possessions immediately. My dad finally said most of the stuff was in a storage unit they'd rented. I asked for the location and access info, and my mom refused, saying they'd return everything when they're ready. Like, the audacity is just unbelievable. That was the final straw. Any guilt I had about evicting them completely vanished in that moment. I called my lawyer again, and he confirmed that any possessions they left behind after the eviction could legally be considered abandoned property after a reasonable notice period, which in my state is 7 days. The day of the eviction was honestly surreal. The sheriff showed up at 9 a.m. with the formal papers. My parents were still in their pajamas looking shocked that this was actually happening. Like they genuinely seemed surprised that there were actual consequences to their actions. My dad suddenly started clutching his chest and claiming he had heart problems. He doesn't. My mom started sobbing hysterically for the sheriff's benefit. The sheriff, who was super professional, explained they had 3 hours to gather essential personal items before they had to leave. They only took some clothing and a few personal things, leaving behind furniture, electronics, kitchen stuff, etc. As they were leaving, my dad told the sheriff they'd be back for the rest soon. Following my lawyer's advice, I immediately sent them a certified letter, so they couldn't claim they never got it, notifying them they had 7 days to collect their remaining belongings before they would be considered legally abandoned. I also texted them the same info just to be extra sure. During that week, they made zero attempt to come get their stuff. Instead, they sent me these nasty text messages about what a terrible daughter I am, and they got family members to call and yell at me. My Aunt Martha called me at 2 a.m. just to scream at me about family loyalty. My cousin Brooke sent me this long paragraph about how I'll regret this when they're dead. Fun times. After the 7 days passed with no attempt from them to collect their things, I took action. I contacted a local auction house to assess and sell the valuable furniture and collectibles. I donated all the usable clothing and household items to a domestic violence shelter, which felt kind of poetic, honestly. I did separate out and safely store genuinely sentimental items like their photo albums and some old family keepsakes, because even though I'm mad, I'm not a monster. I documented everything with photos and detailed lists. The auction ended up bringing in about $13,000, which I used to change all the locks, install security cameras, which I never thought I'd need for protection from my own parents, and repair the damage they'd done to my house over the past 2 years. There was about $4,000 left, which I put in a separate account. I sent them another certified letter with a complete inventory of what was sold, what was donated, what I kept in storage for them, and a full accounting of the money. 2 days later, they showed up with a rented truck, clearly expecting to load up all their stuff. The look on their faces when I explained everything had been legally liquidated was almost worth all the trouble. Almost. Tracy, my mom, started screaming that I had no right to sell their things. I calmly handed them copies of all the written notices and legal documentation showing I'd followed proper procedures. My dad threatened to sue me for the value of their possessions. Lol, good luck with that. I gave them a file containing the inventory, sales records, and legal justification my lawyer had prepared. My mom demanded to know where the money was, and I explained how most of it was used for home repairs and security improvements, like the cameras they were currently being recorded on, lol. My dad called me dead to them and said I'd regret this someday. I offered them the remaining $4,000 and access to the sentimental items I'd stored, but they stormed off without taking either. They've been staying with my Uncle Ron since the eviction, telling literally everyone who will listen that I stole their possessions and left them homeless. The family is split about 50-50, some believing their sob story and others supporting me after I shared the full story about the lake house and how they'd been living rent-free in my house for 2 years. While sorting through their abandoned stuff before the auction, I found something that made me feel sick. There were documents showing they had been planning to sell the lake house for years, even before my grandparents died. Like, they had been in contact with realtors about potential listing prices while my grandpa was still alive. The betrayal was premeditated from the start. About 3 months after all this went down, I got a call from the new owners of the lake house. During renovations, they discovered this hidden compartment in the boathouse that contained a bunch of old family photos and this journal my grandpa had kept about the property's history. They invited me to come visit and collect these items, which was incredibly kind of them. Going back there was emotional, but also healing in a weird way. That small connection to my grandparents' legacy has given me some comfort through all this family mess. My house finally feels like my space again. I sometimes feel guilty about how things went down, but my therapist keeps reminding me that I didn't actually do anything wrong. I just established boundaries with parents who had betrayed not just me, but my grandparents' wishes too. I know I'll probably never have a real relationship with my parents again unless they somehow acknowledge what they did and make genuine amends, which seems about as likely as me winning the lottery without buying a ticket, lol. But honestly, my anxiety has decreased like 80% since they've been gone, which tells me everything I need to know about how toxic they were. Edit. To answer everyone asking if I'm planning to sue them for the lake house money, I considered it, but my lawyer said it would be an expensive uphill battle with no guarantee of winning. I've decided for my own mental health to focus on moving forward instead of fighting a legal battle that could drag on for years. For those asking about my grandma's wedding ring, no, they never returned it. My mom is still wearing it according to pics my cousin sent me. I've considered filing a police report for theft, but I'm not sure I can prove it was officially mine since it was a verbal gift. My lawyer is looking into options. Several people asked what happened to all their threats to sue me. As my lawyer predicted, they never actually filed anything. They don't have a legal leg to stand on, and deep down, they probably know it. They're all talk. Thanks for all the suggestions about installing more security. Yes, I've already set up a complete system with cameras, motion sensors, and even reinforced the door frames. They had a key to the old locks, so I was worried they might try to break in. I've also frozen my credit and changed all my passwords just in case.